welcome to this week's Fireside Chat with Jesse. I am joined today by Michael Hong, President of Taycor Financial. Thanks for joining me, Michael.
Glad to be here. Thank you so
No,
much for having me.
no, I'm glad to have you on here, man. I think when I saw your interview with Leslie, I don't even know, but it was probably like a year ago. I was looking at your background behind your office, and I'm like, that's a nice view.
Thank you. It's a little hazy these days, but it's a beautiful place to be.
Yeah, no, absolutely, man. So, Michael, for those people who might not be familiar with you, do you mind just kind of giving your career to date in equipment finance?
Sure. In short, I grew up in equipment finance. It has raised me and provided for me and now my family for over 20 years now. I started my career in Atlanta with Crest Capital as an intern. And through nearly a decade and with incredible teaching and mentoring, grew through several roles and departments, but primarily focused around sales, marketing, and business development. I left having learned incredible lessons, but in hindsight realized that there was so much more I could have learned and asked. But I ultimately moved to California to be closer to family and joined Taycor Financial about 12 years ago. It was a very small company at the time, and the expectation was always to wear a lot of hats, but the unexpected roles and responsibilities or new learning opportunities started soon after joining when our single operations head went on maternity leave. I found myself venturing into credit and funding, untreaded waters before, but
Sure.
it was challenging. But to this day, I find having experienced the full journey of a customer from very, very beginning to very, very end, or the full career path, even from very entry level to, head of state now, it's been invaluable.
No, and that's an interesting thought. And, I know there's some organizations in equipment finance who like almost force that training program on people, like Great America, and Cedar Rapids is kind of one of them, where it's like you're
Great company.
in these different pods where you go around the office and have to learn everything. My first sales job in equipment finance was with a company called OSG, and they hired me as a salesperson to grow an equipment finance arm for them. And my first 2 weeks, they had me running printers because it was an invoice presentment shop. And I'm like, what does sales have to do with this? And they're just like, trust the process. So it's like you had to go back there, learn everything. So when you're presenting what your organization does, you actually have hands-on experience, and it makes it that much more impactful. At the time, you're like, this is annoying. What am I doing here? Like, come on. But overall, that's a great it's a great training program for sure, man. And then I guess on that, so when you started off kind of in a sales role, and then you get more into credit, like that's not something that typically coincides.
Sure.
But can we talk about what that was like, if you don't mind?
Sure. First, it was eye-opening. It's a walk on the other side or a peek behind the curtain. But further, there were two specific stages of learning credit. Back then, we were primarily a broker originator, and more recently, when we became a lender, being a credit analyst is very different when you are underwriting to match to a lender's appetite versus when you're approving to hold on balance sheet. Both require skill craft.
Sure.
But there are several additional layers in considering risk policies, concentration limits, having a credit philosophy that exists as a lender that didn't when I was in the trenches. Ultimately, the experience gave me a lot of insight into why things happen and a very high respect and appreciation for that role.
As opposed to the typical salesperson that's just like, just approve the deal. Come on, man, come on.
Sure.
So like, what was it? So you grew up in California, and then you went down to Georgia.
The
How long were
opposite.
you?
So I grew up in
Oh,
Georgia.
the opposite.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm so sorry. I misunderstood that. And but you had family, you said, in California.
Mm-hmm. And so, I started my career in Atlanta as
Okay.
an intern, and it was, kind of a job that I got friend of a friend. And I was looking for a little bit more safety, which is a funny story, but more safety and stability. But I found so much more than that.
Well, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. Now, was your family like saying, "Hey, you should come out to California"? You know,
Yeah,
should move.
it's a story about a niece that um, we were very close. I was living together with, and I just didn't want to miss watching her grow up when she moved out to California.
Nope, nope. That's fair, and it's like I said. So California is beautiful.
It is
Yeah,
indeed.
not a bad place to live. But then again, Atlanta is not that bad either. You can,
Atlanta is
if you
wonderful
like
as well.
if you like to sit in traffic for like hours at a
There's
time. But then,
there's traffic everywhere, Jesse.
yeah, I was
But I
gonna
can
say
tell
that.
you,
Never mind.
you know, Georgia has Southern hospitality, and those most certainly aren't two words that they string together. Um, it really does mean something, and there's a wonderful culture in the Southern states that um, maybe don't exist in the same way here in California, but there's wonderful things about wherever you live.
I grew up in upstate New York, so Southern hospitality was kind of a foreign thought when people in New York, New Jersey are like, what is this? What is this nonsense? But Michael, if you don't mind, you just kind of talk about Taycor for a little bit, just kind of introduce the organization, how long they've been around, if
Sure.
you don't mind.
So Taycor started about 30 years ago, and the name, since I'm often asked, comes from the original founder's niece and nephew, Taylor and Corey. He stitched the two parts of the name together and, became Taycor. But beyond the name and the commitment to the good reputation that was established, there's been a lot of changes. Lots of growth, lots of maturing during the last 12 years I've been here. But the story really started to take shape with the first hire after me. It wasn't sales, business development, or operations, but instead I hired a full stack engineer. And it took a
Okay.
lot of convincing. But I knew technology was going to be the way forward. It was going to be innovation through technology that would pave the pathway to success. Even if at the time I didn't have a full definition of what success meant. And today we have a better definition of success. And for us, it means becoming our industry standard for customer experience. And the byproduct of pursuing this success over the years has been tremendous growth in size, strength, and capabilities. And today we employ across 15 states with 14 with 4 different offices, and it's a dramatic change. And that
Wow.
kind of feels like it happened slowly and then all at once.
Well, thank you for that background there. As far as like business channels, ticket sizes, types of equipment, what do you guys, any specialties?
We're a generalist. We have siloed and created these spokes so that there are experts within partnerships, there are experts within industries, different deal sizes. And so the right deal, the right customer goes to the right team.
Got it. Got it. And you said you're across 15 different states, so definitely, all over the place there, which is good, and I'm sure of a challenge as a growing organization.
Sure.
Um, so how do you, as the leader of Taycor, try to maintain culture? Michael, in a growing organization that's in different time zones.
Great question. In our early years, we knew we wanted to build a good culture, but it took several iterations before we were able to really define what we wanted to be. Then we discovered as we grew that culture, like technology and operational processes, needed to be redefined or adapted to scale up. For instance, in the beginning, I was part of every interview, hiring, onboarding, and training process. And up until about 100 or so people, that sort of worked until it didn't. At some point, departments were growing and changing, and I was sharing outdated information. Today, the process is much better. It's the department leaders that hire and manage their team and continue to have that good culture. And that culture, it has several pillars and tenets, but it can be simplified into family first, and then do your best and care for others. And as we continue to grow, I found myself having to change as well. However, some of those things I found unacceptable and had to adjust. For instance, um, not long after I stopped being a part of every hire for the company, I was out to lunch on a Saturday with my family. Um, my wife pointed out a person wearing a Taycor t-shirt. Now, I want to clarify, we don't sell t-shirts online or have a large footprint in clothing retail, so it's kind of cool to see a t-shirt out in the wild.
Sure.
But I also had the realization I didn't know who this person was, what role they were in or department they were a part of. And there was a semi-awkward introduction that day. But the very next Monday, I made sure that within the first week or two of hires, I introduce myself and spend time getting to know who they are, where they come from, and what drives and motivates them. And this too will be part of our culture and a tradition that we keep until it too needs to be adjusted to scale up.
No, and that's interesting. And I'm sure, as someone who was involved in that process, I mean, what employee number were you when you joined there?
I was employee number 4, so there were 3 people at Taycor when I started.
Three. And then what would you say it was north of 100? And then finally you had to take a step back. And that's not an easy position, to be in, right? Where, um, you know, what did that do to you? Because, sometimes you have to let go because there's certain things where your mind is better off being, right? Where your skill sets are better off being applied to on a daily basis. But sure, it's not easy.
It's not. I noticed that when I was wearing more hats, I was able to interact with people for different situations. I used to joke that I was the number one tech support agent or the number one dishwasher. I was the one helping to set up the potlucks or clean them up afterwards. And during those times, it's very easy just to interact with the different people and just get to know them better. Today, I feel like I'm tethered to a desk and in Zooms or meetings all day long. And so those types of interactions become fewer and fewer. And it's an adjustment.
Yeah, and I'm sure it wears on you a little bit. So as you continue to progress in your career, I'm gonna have to reach out and be like, "Hey, have we found any of that like balance a little bit?" Because that's one of the trickier parts too, right? Where it's like you want to be, you seem like you're the individual that's lead by example, and you're not afraid to roll your hands up and get your sleeves dirty a little bit there. Um, or I guess let me take a step back there. Roll your sleeves up and get your hands dirty. See, my mind's all over the place today. But regardless, I can imagine just as the type of individual that you are, you try to or you're at least trying to go back and do some of that stuff.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, it's all part of the maturation cycle. Like I said, when we started, we were a team of 3 plus me. We were a broker then and um, became a discounter throughout the journey and then a funding source. And so there's been a lot of changes. And if you don't change, then and hold on to just the way things were, things will eventually start to bend and break.
Absolutely. Absolutely. What is it? Stay in place too long, turn into a plant.
Yes.
um, but let's talk about that maturation cycle, if you don't mind, because I would think that as a lot of brokers, as they start to formulate these companies, it's like, oh yeah, we just want to do this. We want to originate to sell, right? We just want to go out and do business, and then we want to do that. But then as the company matures, then it's okay. Maybe we want to hold our own
Mm.
deals, or maybe we want to hold some of the deals and then sell off the rest of it. What's that like? Because to me, that seems like the natural progression, as especially when you look at some of these independents out there now, right? Where that's kind of where they started and that's where they're going. So you mind just kind of talking through that life cycle, Michael?
Sure. Well, maybe a little bit of advice. I would say take your time. There are stages and phases to the process, and each one comes with growing pains. The first step of becoming a broker originator, um, that first step, I would say, is one of the most challenging, day one. Then becoming a single transaction discounter where you're handling the contracts and often the funding process. And then on to small portfolio discounting where you may service the first couple of payments. Then comes a big leap of faith, but a relatively small step operationally where you start holding a few deals through the term. And then nearly the reverse. It's a small step of faith, but a large step operationally when you begin to hold deals at scale. So take your time. Second, I would say find good mentors, people that are going through the process and others that have gone through it. Our industry is small and the people in it are amazing. And it's incredible how much people are willing to help complete strangers and how quickly strangers become close friends. Third, I would say prepare ahead of time. I remember a few years ago, I had an accounting department of zero. I was doing most of the bookkeeping and payroll, remitting payroll taxes manually. I remember during an audit and due diligence process with a banker, they asked how we do expense controls and tracking, and I
Expense
showed him
control.
expense control. Um, uh, then I, reached down below and I brought up my shoebox of receipts and the things were kind of sticking out the edges and he thought it was a hilarious joke until he realized I was serious and he kind of was a little confused and he started scribbling a lot of notes after that discovery. But thankfully, today we have a team of 5 in our accounting department with real policies and practices that don't include shoeboxes. So there are other great lessons learned, but those are 3, and it's a good start there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Expense control. What are you talking about? Expense control. Here's my box of receipts. Leave me alone. Go away. Oh no, but thank you for that. And also, to your earlier point, where the first person that you hired was a full stack developer. I'm assuming that technology along the way of this maturation cycle probably played a big role as well.
Yes. We describe ourselves as a technology forward customer service company. It's just that the product we happen to sell is equipment financing, working capital, lines of credit, and several other offerings. But at our heart, we're a customer service company, and we do it a lot through technology. So
Oh,
it's a,
that's perfect.
a little bit of a unique spin to things, but it's created a lot of success for us.
No, and that's refreshing to hear because I think the typical MO is, let's get the equipment in the door and then we'll figure out technology later. And that's a recipe for a lot of technical debt and
Sure.
organizational inefficiencies. So,
Yes.
um, yeah, go ahead. There was a thought there.
Well, I could say that we didn't know what other people were doing until we started being a part of the trade associations, our industry associations, because I didn't grow up as employee number one, and I didn't have the experiences of going through day one trials and tribulations. So we somewhat evolved and matured in this small bubble, whereas most people, I think, have day one travel partners. And some of the time, because of that, there's a similarity between company structures and goals because they collaborate and solve problems the same way. So it ends up, you know, equipment leasing and financing companies, they all somewhat look the same way because we evolved a little differently outside of the normal system. Um, we look very different, and we only discovered that once we became a part of the associations.
Interesting. Yeah, and that was going to be one of the questions I was going to go into next, anyways, was the trade associations, because you mentioned earlier it's what you learn from other people, and even some of these people are your competitors, but yet you go to like an NEFA event or an AACFB event, and you're sitting around a table with these people that you might be competing with, but you're also sharing ideas to achieve a common goal of being a good provider to a customer.
Um, well, first, I owe everything to this industry. And the AACFB and NEFA are one of the very best ways to give and receive worlds of information. It's also a great way to be part of the community. And if you're willing to both contribute and consume, friendships and mentors are plentiful. I think without knowing people, they feel like competitor, but once you know them, um, I just found that being a proactive part of the community makes the journey easier and less lonely. And as important, makes the process for the end user borrower smoother because it relies on reducing friction between companies, the broker originator and then the lender, then the lender and then service providers that support the transaction, all the way up the chain to the banks that are at the ELFA level that are often buying this business across their senior credit facilities and then securitizing, right? We found that stronger relationships create less friction between the steps.
Sure, absolutely. And you almost have all those people sitting around one table at any one of these given conferences. And I was in the software game for 10 years, and you know, I'd be sitting next. I'd grab a beer with our competitors all the time because it's like, why not? Um, you know, at the end of the day, you're going to win some deals, you're going to lose some deals, but it's you sit there and you look at the person like, I'll get you next time.
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome, Michael. So, with all the different hats that you continue to wear, and everything, and based on the amount of travel that you have, like, do you mind just kind of talking about like work-life balance and kind of
Sure.
what that means to you, and as a leader of an organization, with the amount of employees that you have, what are some best practices that you kind of put in place to make sure that you know people aren't getting burned out?
Well, you gotta live what you preach, right? So for me, family first. I have two young kids, 5 and 7, and though I say I'm in the heat of battle, it's an awesome age. I love watching them grow, learn, and discover. Um, Work and family take up the majority of my time and focus, but I find myself healthier and happier when I take part in hobbies and passions, right? And thematically, um, I discovered I enjoyed difficult things. I enjoy struggling and challenges and a healthy dose of suffering. So um, I've done Brazilian Jiu Jitsu for 20 years and would say that is one of my most enjoyable forms of challenge and suffering. But during COVID, I became a runner. And running is wonderful because you can control the amount of difficulty through increasing speed and tempo when you don't have that much time, or create the challenge through longer distance and duration when time allows. And especially these days when it's cold and raining and even snowing, which is very odd weather for this area, it's easy to get a full dose of suffering after 2 or 3 miles. But generally, more than distance, it's about making sure that when it gets hard, you run beyond that. And I think it's I realize that building the business over the years, at the end of the day, I'm mentally and most oftenly emotionally just spent. But physically, I sit tethered to a desk and the imbalance between the mental, emotional, and physical, it wasn't healthy. So more than distance, I make it a part of my daily routine. And I find that once I just make it a point to check it off and run 7 days a week, no days off, it's created a lot of healthy habits.
No, that's fantastic. I'm tired just thinking about you running 7 days a week.
Well,
But
what makes Jesse Johnson tick?
I mean, I have sort of, have sort of a routine in the morning. It got a little disrupted this week when I had some knee surgery, so I can't do it for a little while. But I get up every morning at 5 a.m., walk the dogs for a couple miles. But it's a walk. It's not a run. Like I probably need to drop like 20 pounds before I could probably healthy. Like what are you running? How many miles are you running a day?
Um, it ranges. When it's cold and rainy, I feel like I get that full dose of suffering after 2 or 3 miles. But generally speaking, I run anywhere from 5 to 10 miles a day.
That's fantastic. So maybe these is two. I mean, eventually it'd be nice to get up to that level, but no, I mean, like you, it's kind of family first. I have a little bit more of a gap. My daughter's 5, my son's 14,
Mm.
so it's a little bit more of a gap there. But it's entertaining. But it is a second job for sure. So it's like you have your, I don't even know, 5 to 5 job, and then you go home and it's the continual where it's like, okay, here you go, honey. Here's your here's the rest of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I could tell you that work-life balance. I can tell you that work-life balance is very helpful, because my family lives very close by, and
Okay.
it makes it a lot easier to be present for the kids, their concert, play, school events, and uh, it's wonderful that they're actually here often. My wife and kids, they walk to work, and so they're often here. They run around saying hi and hello to their aunties and uncles, and pull out their wiggle cars and scooters that they have stashed in my office and do a few laps. And ultimately, it's the incredibly strong team here at Taycor that allows me to, be present for my family. So, I mean, it's been a great blessing over these years.
Nope. Nope. Absolutely. And if we're not doing it for family, what are we really doing it for, right?
Absolutely.
Well,
Absolutely.
you already. I ask everyone on here a fun fact about themselves, but and the fact that you love pain and suffering, like the whole jujitsu thing, like I don't know, like that's bold, man. Like, what was it like your first day you walked into the gym and you were just like, yes, I want someone to just beat the crap out of me for an hour and then I'll pay you to do it.
So, it was an interesting start. So this was back maybe early 2000, before the UFC and all of that, where jujitsu became a little bit more mainstream. I was at a car wash, and there was this giant human. I mean, he was literally the size of a door, as tall and as wide, and he had neck and face tattoo. He just was a very noticeable human being. And so I was reading I don't know, maybe a car magazine at the time, and I looked up, saw him, looked up, saw him. I was like, wow, this guy's a really big guy. And looked up, he saw me looking, and he got up, and I thought, oh my, what, what's gonna happen? Um, and he comes up and he introduces himself. He goes, "Hey, my name is Robert Napvik, and um, I teach jujitsu over at the school. If you're interested, here's my card. You should come check it out." And I think most people have a very similar story. Their first day, someone smaller than them, or someone that looks like they shouldn't be able to do what they do, just bends you around, twists you up, chokes you out. And that day, it was definitely a selling point. I thought, I got to figure this thing out. This is amazing. This this is great.
uh, I just one of my buddies out here was like, "Yeah, I tried doing it. I lasted 2 weeks, and then I just couldn't do it anymore because literally, it's like I walk out and everything hurts."
Yeah. And it's still like that 20 years later, except it hurts even when you're not doing it now.
It's fantastic. So you didn't have to go toe to toe with that human door, did you?
Oh, well, he is probably the nicest. It's usually the smaller people that are very mean about how they practice jujitsu.
Note to self. Note to self. Uh, it's human nature. I'd probably still go after the small person. Just same outcome. Same outcome, Michael. But I guess kind of my last question I have for you, if you don't mind, is why should small businesses or organizations in equipment finance choose? Why would they want to do business with Taycor Financial?
Hmm. I believe we provide exceptional customer experience. Throughout the years, we've automated and made easy and smooth all the various steps within the financing process so that our people can do what technology can't. Be the concierge, be the face to face, hold the hands of our customers and walk them through the process and make it feel smooth and to provide a good product. So striving to be the industry standard for customer experience, truly there's a long way to go. But I
Sure.
believe as we strive to obtain that, um, even where we are today, um, we do our best. And it is a good process and a good experience for the customer.
Well, excellent. Well, I really appreciate your time today. Excited to see what you've been able to grow the organization into, and even more excited to see what's on the horizon for Taycor, Michael.
Wonderful. Jesse, thank you so very much.
No worries. Look forward to seeing you at the upcoming conference, man. Have a good day.
See you very soon.
Take care.